I'm gonna lay the groundwork for this story the same way that America laid the groundwork for the Panama Canal. Perfectly. But if I laid it the same way that the French laid the groundwork for the Panama Canal, now this video would be a huge failure. The story starts in 1850 due to something called the gold rush. You might have heard of that. Basically like the Bitcoin of the 1850s. Everybody wanted a piece. So imagine you live on the East Coast, for example. You know the gold rush is happening on the West Coast. You gotta get over there. So what do? You could hop on a mule, that takes about 4 months. You could hop on a boat, go all the way down around South America and then all the way back up. That takes about 6 months. Or you could go somewhere through Panama, maybe? Well, back then there was nothing. But they thought maybe we should put something here. So they put a railroad. Let's say you choose the railroad route, right? 2 months still. That's not getting you to the golden time. You're missing on huge gains time over time. And the railroad itself, to use it, was expensive and time consuming. Now this guy, his name is Ferdinand de Lesseps. I love this guy. He gets word of this complication and he's thinking to himself, I can solve this. You wanna know why he thinks he can solve it? Because he's the same guy who built the Suez Canal through Egypt. And he thinks, I built the Suez Canal, let's get another canal going in here. You know, why not me? Well, here's the thing about Ferdinand. The Suez Canal was built on a dry, flat desert. All right, that's basically like learning to walk. I mean, I'm not saying I could have built the Suez Canal, but I probably could have built the Suez Canal. So Ferdinand says, I've done it before, let's run it back. Get the boys back together, get the gang, we're gonna build it back up. I think Ferdinand refused to acknowledge the fact that Panama, the route that he was trying to build on, was mountainous, scattered with yellow fever, malaria, jaguars, tigers, snakes, bears, whatever controversial adversary you could possibly imagine, it existed right where he thought he was going to build the canal. The biggest factor was rainfall and disease. The rainfall never stopped, and every time they excavated a large area, mud would just slide back into that area and they'd be back to square one. And that's where the darkness of this story starts. What did the most damage, as is true in most historical context, was disease. Like I said, yellow fever and malaria running rampant. About 40 laborers were dying every single day. To make matters worse, the more people that got sick, the more hospitals got overcrowded and the workforce dwindled, so the people who were still working had to work twice as hard. And guess what they were working with? A hatchet and a pickaxe. That was their tools. Allegedly, after people would pass away, it was so common that they would just kick them into the excavation pile, their body, a human person. After 8 years, Ferdinand finally throws in the towel. 23,000 recorded casualties, many speculated, not even recorded, mostly indigenous people, and all the people who invested in the project, they lost all their profits. So here you have a half-excavated Panama Canal ripe for the taking. In comes Act 2. Now, might I add, the darkness is not over. America, when they stepped in, sure, they got the job done, but they didn't do it in perfection either. So we're gonna talk about that. In comes Teddy Roosevelt, the bull moose. He knows that America is trying to become a global power. He's at the forefront of it. So he's like, how can we get warships from the Atlantic to the Pacific and vice versa? How can we expand our trade? How can we get money? How can we expand? You get the idea. It's America. It's America mentality, and he's full blown in it. He wants to build a canal in Nicaragua. He thinks it's much more practical. But of course, as a sign of power, he wants to big dog France and say, we're gonna do what you couldn't do. So he's like, let's fire it up where they fell short. One issue. Panama is still a province of Colombia, and America doesn't like that. They want full power. So they go to Panama and they're like, hey, not saying that we're gonna be on your side, but you definitely want independence, right? And Panama's like, yeah, we want independence. And they're like, how about we handle this Colombia situation together? And sure enough, the United States, I think they parked up a ship on the coast while Colombia is already in shambles. And sure enough, Panama gets its freedom and they sign a contract with the United States saying that they have rights to the canal. A lot of people didn't like that. That's just like imperialism to a T, but that's America. Not saying I condone it or go against it. You know, I don't get political on here. I just give the story. And we're gonna touch more on how that resolved itself later on. So America starts in 1904. They hate the sea level idea. They see what happened. They don't want that to happen. So they get some engineers. They're like, we need to get above sea level here. And all we need to do is excavate through a small part of the mountain. We don't need to knock the whole thing down. So they dig out a huge part of the mountain. They get a railroad going through there. And the engineering is actually pretty sick if you're interested in it. But basically, they used a lot of explosives. They used some steam power. They got the job done. Took about 10 years. But here's the dark side of it. American attempt at the Panama Canal's construction focused heavily on Caribbean workers and Central American workers, all of whom had horrific working conditions. Black workers were segregated and lived in overcrowded boxcars. Meanwhile, the white workers had better working conditions and better access to healthcare. And accidents, disease, and unsafe working conditions affected black workers 4 times more than white workers. Mortality rates were 4 times higher. That's not a coincidence. Similar to the French complications, many deaths were unreported and graves were left unnamed. That's a dark ending. Alas, after 33 years of its initial plans, the canal was finally built. Somewhere between 25,000 and 30,000 people died on the construction itself. Brother, that is a lot of people. Come on. The canal became a huge thing. 5% of world trade was passing through the canal, but the people from Panama, they didn't like this, and that was fair. So they started to push back against the United States. They said, this is the Panama Canal in Panama. We want it back. Around the 70s, protests began to ramp up. People from Panama, like I said, they're not happy. So Jimmy Carter, president, 1977, signs the Panama Canal Treaty, basically signing over the rights to Panama, saying, let's just keep this neutral. We don't want beef with you guys. We'll hand it over. Panama gets the Panama Canal. They're happy about it. In the early 2000s, you see an expansion on the Panama Canal. Cool videos on that on YouTube as well. They doubled the size of that thing, and now with modern engineering, woo, that thing works efficiently. Where are we today? The Don is allegedly trying to buy Panama back. So that's where we're at today. This is America. This is the world. This is 2025. It's been another Hood Classic. Thank you for watching. I vowed to myself that on this video, I would get back to my roots, to being authentic, to being the man I knew I once was when I started this channel. You don't want a Wikipedia page. I don't want to be a Wikipedia page. I want to give the knowledge in a special way, a way that makes you feel special. I'm going to get the balance between the yap and the wisdom and the editing. Put it together, 1 million subscribers. We on the way. Hope you learned something. I bet you did. Thanks for watching. Until next time, we out.